Okay, I'm going to call the meeting of the Corporate Services Committee to order. I'm going to start by reading a statement. The City of London is committed to making every effort to provide alternate formats and communication supports for council, standing or advisory committee meetings and information upon request. To make a request for any city service, please contact accessibility@london.ca or 519-661-2489, extension 2425. I hope everybody has picked up the added agenda today because there are a number of things on it. There are 3 additional addeds under the additional business section, and there are 3 additional addeds to the confidential session of the committee. So hopefully everybody's got copies of those. So I'll proceed through the added agenda in order, and we'll move to the confidential session at the appropriate time. I'll start off, though, with disclosures of pecuniary interest, if anybody has any. Okay, seeing none, we have 1 item for consent. I would look for any discussion from the committee or a mover and a seconder for that particular motion. Moved by Mayor Holder, seconded by Deputy Mayor Helmer. Any discussion on the POA, accounts receivable report? Nope. Okay, seeing none, we're going to open that one for voting.
Closing the vote, the motion is passed 6-0.
Okay, we have no scheduled items, no items for direction, but we have 3 deferred matters and additional business on the added agenda. The first is a resubmission of the report that we saw at our last committee meeting. Council referred that back to us. It was actually a deferral of the decision on the recognition for a Black History Month event until the proclamation policy was complete. So we decided to defer that. We sent that to council. Council has sent it back to us. So it's before the committee today. So, and I intend on dealing with each of the additional business separately because I've had people indicate that they want to comment on each. So 5.1 is on the floor, and what we have is our report back from council. So if anybody would like to speak to this or move a motion, now would be the time. Councillor Kaibaga.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'd like to move a motion pertaining to this. And I have the language ready if you would like to note it down. So the motion would be that the Civic Administration be directed to report back to the December 3rd, 2019 Corporate Service Committee with options of proclaiming Black History Month and other proclamations. B, that the recognition event for Black History Month be received and implemented for February 2020 and onward. And C, that communications received from community partners and the petition received from the Black History Committee be received as well.
Okay, if we can ensure that language is is provided to the clerk so that we can get it up on the screen. We're at committee. No, we need the motion too.
And I need the.
Okay, so we need copies of the letters that you want us to receive, and then the language for the motion, and then I'll look for discussion and/or a seconder.
Thank you. So the letters were received. I forward them. They were sent to my email. I forward them to the clerk, Kathy Saunders, and the petition as well, which was online. I've been able to forward it to her, and I can send you the motion right now if you wish. Yeah.
If you have a copy of the motion, you can get the clerk so that they can put it on the screen. Maybe I looked at the clerk about the potential communications that are not part of the committee package, but perhaps were received after the added deadline, and how that would incorporate into this process.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I actually just received the communications about 15, 20 minutes ago by email, so it's past the added agenda deadline. So the choice is we can either add those communications to the council agenda as communications, or we can add them to the report going forward to council. But we did just receive them not too long ago and after the added deadline, which is why they're not before you.
Okay, so there's a couple of options there that certainly doesn't preclude the contemplation of the motion. Certainly whatever committee passes these could land as communications at council, and then as happens at council, referred into the relevant sections of the committee report, or they could be appended to whatever direction council sets today and passed on to council that way. So there's a couple of options there, but I think colleagues are looking to see the language of the motion. So we're going to get that up on the screen, and then maybe I can open discussion before we ask for a seconder, unless there's a seconder now, in which case, okay, there's a seconder. So we will get the language up so everybody can see it, and I'll go back to Councillor Kayabanga.
Thank you, through your chair. Just wanted to clarify that we moved this to come back to committee like a few days ago, and it was actually a lot of work for the community to work together and send letters of support. So I do apologize for getting them this late, but it was all very short notice. But as we received in the letters and different communications from the community, they're very happy to support this going forward. And the reason why we're sending it to December 3rd is also really important. It's short notice as well, but as we talked about, Black History Month is coming up in February, and as we think, and the community thinks that this is really important to do, it's important that we hear back from staff by December 3rd.
Other discussion? Councillor, or Deputy Mayor Helmer.
Thank you. I'm glad that we have the report back to committee, because I think this is where we need to hash out how to handle this and how to go forward. And I think the idea of having it come back to our next meeting so we can try and actually make the decision on how to proceed relatively soon, I think that's important. I don't want to make the decision now and try and figure it out in committee without the benefit of the report from our staff. And I think it's going to be really helpful that we get that in December, because I can imagine a scenario where we have a report come forward and we say, okay, that's like 80% of what we'd like to see, but we want to make some changes. And if we do, we really need to have time. You know, there's going to be a break over the Christmas holidays, and then we'll be back in January, and then there's not much time after that to do anything in advance of February. So I think we really need to get something in December. That's really the only window we have to make any kind of decision. If it's all perfect, excellent, we've got it done in advance. If it needs any little adjustments, then we've got time still to make those adjustments in January. So I know this is probably putting the clerk's office under the gun in terms of getting something towards this meeting, but I do think we need to see something in December if we can. That way it gives us the flexibility to make adjustments. And so I support it for that reason. In terms of the communications that just come in and the committee members haven't even had a chance to see them, I haven't seen them, I think forwarding those to council is the most appropriate way of handling those. So I'm not sure what the motion says, if it's exactly the language that Councillor Kayabanga had suggested, but I think just forwarding them on, given the timing, would be appropriate.
Okay, so since I saw Councillor Kaibaga nodding at that, we'll adjust C to reflect that direction as the mover and seconder are both supportive. I have Mayor Holder next.
Thank you. I think the key question actually is probably to the clerk from a timing standpoint, mindful of all the various responsibilities and things have to get done. What's the practicality through you, Chair, of the clerk's office being able to have this ready as has been requested in the motion?
I'll go to the city clerk on that one.
Through you, Mr. Chair, staff had begun doing the research, a couple weeks ago, and Ms. Westlake Power has taken the bulk of the work on. So it's not that we haven't been working on it. We are working on it. So we'll have it ready for December 3rd if that's the direction.
Mayor Holder.
So is the intention, just to be clear, is the intention to deal with one specific proclamation relative to Black History Month? Or is it to deal with the whole issue of proclamations, which I thought was the intention when it was originally directed back to the clerk? I think it's important for committee and ultimately council to understand that distinction. Perhaps through you, Chair, to the clerk.
To the city clerk.
Through Mr. Chair, based on the motion that's before us, it would appear that the report would be on both a proclamation regarding Black History Month and other proclamations. And it would be an information report providing background on what other municipalities, and then we would be seeking direction from council as to how they wish to proceed.
Okay, if you click current item, you'll be able to see the motion as it stands. I just have a question about the motion. In Part B, it says that the report that was referred back to us be received and implemented for February 2020. I'm unclear on what in Mr. Coxhead's report, which was an information report, is being implemented. I just, maybe we need to clean up the language there, but I'll look for some clarification. Councillor Kaibaga?
Thank you. So through you, Chair, I think there's a report that was brought back by Mr. Coxhead's team, and the report mentioned a couple of things that they could do in terms of celebrating Black History Month at the City of London, and we only received it because we were waiting on the proclamation policy. So we're moving it together because they're together, they're connected, and there's quite a bit of things that they had identified in the report that they could do along with proclamation, but that report sits back because it's still waiting proclamation. So we're moving it together with the proclamation that they will implement it as they had indicated, but also as we look, the report, we get a report back from staff on proclamations, why not still implement the other things that Black History report had indicated that we could do?
I'll go to the mayor in a second. I would just want to identify in the report, there's a couple of options that are listed. One of them is a proclamation, but I also heard committee members say, we're going to receive the proclamation information in December. That's what part of the request. So are you just looking for maybe doing the invitation of the delegation before council, which is B in that report? I just want to be clear. It's probably best to be clear in the section B exactly what pieces you'd like implemented and be specific about those rather than implement the whole thing if we're still going to be receiving some information back in the first part A. I'm just looking for the clarification.
So maybe through you, Chair, we can ask Mr. Coxhead if he could comment on what they can and cannot do while they wait for the proclamation to come forward.
I could certainly go to Mr. Coxhead and then I'll go to the mayor. Mr. Coxhead or the clerk as they talk.
Thank you, through the chair. So it's my understanding that that the interest of the community is to have a proclamation of Black History Month. Currently, we have a policy against proclamations in general. My report recognizes an alternative direction for council to direct the clerk and Mr. Card to look at proclamations as a whole as to whether we would be doing and amending the proclamation policy if council saw fit to do so, and that therefore would allow for a proclamation of Black History Month. In the alternative, proclamations weren't considered by council. We have a recommendation for a delegation before council in the first meeting of February as described in item B of my report.
I have Mayor Holder, and then I have Deputy Mayor Helmer.
I don't think, thank you, Chair, I don't think anyone has an issue with alternatives or options as it relates to Black History Month in any particular momentous event. I think the issue of proclamations is bigger, with great respect, than Black History Month. This is the issue that was determined by a prior council that no proclamations would be done if my concern about, and I don't want to prejudge the report that's coming through, but one proclamation that is done on a standalone basis, I think opens the door to us having to consider all. And it might well be that this is the direction that's taken, but I would really prefer, I'm good with alternatives and options that we implement to celebrate Black History Month. But one proclamation on a standalone basis, if that's part of the motion today to accept prior to receiving, that's why I need clarification through you, Chair, as to what it is that's being requested here. Are we requested to support alternatives and options? I can't speak for other colleagues. I would imagine every one of us would be fine with that. If we're also talking about adding a proclamation with this, it feels premature relative to the whole issue of the clerk reporting back on the city's position relative to proclamations. I don't know how you can single out one relative to all others when that's already a prior decided matter of council. So I'd like some wisdom from you as to what that is exactly we're being asked to consider.
Okay, I have Deputy Mayor Helmer and then Councillor Kaibaga.
Perhaps it would be helpful if we just revised the language in B, because obviously the staff report, at a certain point in the report, it has two divergent options. We're not suggesting to do either of them, actually. I think the language here is to capture the future City of London employee events that are planned to go ahead in February 2020. The idea is that, like, we just want to be clear that those things are going ahead and we're not holding up all those other things. I frankly don't think they necessarily need a direction from committee or council. I think they're already underway anyway, but there's three of them that are listed there, right? The Employee Resources Group, the City of London hosting, the artwork, like these are things I think we're just trying to be clear that we're not holding those things up. And perhaps saying the three items, the three employee events be implemented, maybe that would just clarify it, because we're not saying do a delegation or do a proclamation. That's to be decided, but the other things can go ahead. I see Mr. Coxhead wanted to jump in.
Mr. Coxhead.
Thank you. So these are things that are planned, that they're done administratively. They do not require council approval. These are in the works through our various groups that are involved in celebrating Black History Month. We don't need any direction to do them. They're already planned.
I have the clerk as well.
Through Mr. Chair, I just also wanted to remind the committee that there was a second council direction with respect to this matter, which was to report back to the Corporate Services Committee with respect to City of London issuance of proclamation policies, specifically in terms of acknowledging nationally recognized proclamations. So that's also outstanding as well and would be part of the same report.
Okay, Councillor Kaibaga.
Thank you. So maybe through your chair, we can change the wording of the motion to just have it back all reported on December 3rd, and then we can go from there, just make decisions from there. It's not really a direction right now other than asking staff to report back on different options that we can do in terms of proclamations and moving forward the Black History Month.
So would you like to just receive Mr. Coxhead's report then as B?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we'll get that change made. I'll just make sure the seconder is good with that. Yes, Councillor Van Meerbergen.
So just for clarification, Are we now looking at taking the word implemented out of B?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we'll get that adjusted and up on the screen very shortly. Okay, if you click current item and refresh your screen there, you should see the current wording. I'll just make sure the mover and the seconder are good with the wording as it stands now, and then we can continue the debate. Just give everybody a chance to read it. In fact, since it's changed, I may just read it out for people at home who can't see what we see in the screen. So it says that the following actions be taken with respect to a recognition event for Black History Month. A, the Civic Administration be directed to report back to the December 3rd, 2019 Corporate Services Committee with options of proclaiming Black History Month and other proclamations. B, the staff report dated November 5th, 2019 with respect to a recognition event for Black History Month be received. And C, the communications received from community partners and the petition of the Black History Committee with respect to this matter be forwarded to council for consideration. Okay, I see the mover and the seconder nodding with that language. We'll return to debate if there is any other. I don't see any. We can open this for voting then.
Closing the vote, the motion's carried 6-0.
Okay, that's 5.1. 5.2 is the first report of the City Manager Search Committee. Colleagues see the report before you. I would look for, we're receiving this? Receipt? Yes, I'll look for receipt. Mayor Holder, seconded by Councillor Kayabага. Any discussion? Okay, we'll open that for voting.
Closing the vote, the motion's passed 6-0.
The next item is a letter from myself, so maybe I'll just turn the chair over to Councillor Kayabага and then I can speak to it.
Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, colleagues. So before you see a request from me to change the date of the council meeting on March 3rd. This will be the meeting where we will ultimately adopt the budget. I'm looking to move it up one day to the Monday, March 2nd, because it conflicts with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities meeting, of which I'm a board member. We actually don't have any meetings the week before because when Councillor Ridley was on council, she actually cleared the way for OGRA representation, and so we put meetings in this week. Now we have someone on FCM but not OGRA, so I'm looking to try to do both, but I will be very clear, as isn't clear in my letter, if this does not work for one member of council, I'm not going to be a barrier from someone participating in the budget final decision making. So if it doesn't work for everybody, I'll certainly be encouraging people not to pass this to council. When I circulated this, I received only positive feedback from colleagues. But that being said, I'm looking to see if this works for everybody. If it does, that's great. We can move the meeting. If it doesn't, I'm happy to not go this direction. So I'll put the motion on the floor. And but please, if this doesn't work for you, please speak up and let me know.
I'll look for a seconder. Any comments or questions? Yes, Councillor Helmer.
I will support it, but mostly because it's November, and I think it's a reasonable amount of notice to give people. A lot of people are coming to this meeting, not just councillors, and we telegraph them way in advance when they're going to be. This is obviously an important one, And I'm very reluctant, frankly, to make any adjustments to when it's gonna be. But I think since we're doing it in November, this is months of notice, and I think people can adjust. It's a very small change in terms of the timing, so I think we'll see what the feedback is once it starts to go towards the council meeting. But I would also suggest that we make everybody aware of this, because, you know, a board or commission could have a problem with it. There could be some kind of conflict, and I just want to make sure that everybody is aware that we're talking about changing it. Because I like Councillor Morgan, I wouldn't want to introduce another problem that could be even more significant than the situation that Councillor Morgan is in. So I'll support it. It's not a problem for me personally, but I do want to make sure everybody's aware that we're moving it.
Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, I would ask, because I share the same concern as Deputy Mayor Helmer. So I talked to the clerk about the notices when they go out for the budget meeting, and I don't know if the clerk can comment on when that occurs, but my understanding is that none of that has formally happened except for what may have been communicated back when we started the budget process. But there are formal notices alerting the public as to when the decision-making and the public participation will happen, including advertisements. I would ask if, through the chair, the clerk could comment on that process.
Through Mr. Chair, with respect to the statutory notice, we have not provided that, but I need to know quickly whether that's being changed, because I provide a notice in December and again in January and again in February, repeating the same date in those notices. As far as speaking with the boards and commissions, I can't speak to that, but as far as the statutory notice, those will be start in December.
Councillor Van Meebergen.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, instead of shortening it, I'm wondering if we could lengthen the process by a day or two. So the 4th or the 5th, the Wednesday or the Thursday, if that may work. I mean, if it comes to going to the Monday, I can work with it, but I'm just wondering if there might be some sense in going the other way.
The clerk, did you want to comment?
Through Madam Vice Chair, the only caution I would give you is that many of the boards and commissions have their meetings on Wednesday and Thursday. They try to avoid Monday and Tuesdays because of our meetings. So I'm not sure if it's a conflict, but I would just caution you on that.
Councillor Morgan.
Yes, just so the committee is clear, my preference in that case would be to actually stick with Tuesday, and I would arrive late because the Federation of Canadian Municipalities board meeting actually goes all the way until the Friday. And the committee that I chair is later in the week. So my preference is, if it doesn't work for everybody, to just leave it as is, and I'll arrive late. Like my first priority is to council and this process. However, if it works out, it'd be great to be able to participate in both, because what will be happening on the Tuesday is the work towards the implementation of our elections strategy and working with the new minority government on the types of things that municipalities would like to see done. And so our strategy sessions are all on the Tuesday. So my desire is not to miss those, but certainly if, again, I'll be very clear, my first priority is to my role here as a municipal councillor. So if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And but it's worth a try to do both, in my opinion.
Mayor Holder.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't hear from what Councillor Van Meebergen said that Monday doesn't work. He was just exploring, if I say it right, exploring other options. And it looks like other options could create different obstacles. So I think the motion on the floor is Monday. We'll see what council says ultimately. We'll have a chance to reflect on that. We've been advised by the clerk there's sufficient notice. So rather than you rescind the motion or even consideration of that, I suggest we work with Monday, see if the balance of council that can work with them as well. And we'll know that by next week.
I just had a question for the clerk, just because I took a look at my calendar to see if we had anything on that Monday, and it shows that there's a hold on a potential council meeting that night. Is that something that we might have in our agenda, or is it just mine?
Through you, Madam Vice Chair, we actually, once I spoke to your assistants, I asked them to place a hold just in case it was approved by council. So I asked that hold be placed.
Thank you. So is there any other comments or questions? We have a mover and a seconder. We're going to call to vote.
Closing the vote, the motion's passed 6-0.
Thank you for that, colleagues. Is there any other additional business? Deputy Mayor Helmer.
Well, I think this is our last meeting of the committee, and I just wanted to recognize you for your able chairing. This is, I think, the 4th year I've served. We had a partial year, the 1 year, with you on the committee, and the second one where you've been the chair. And you had to put up with me as the chair for another one of those years. Let's say this is a tough committee. You know, we deal with all kinds of stuff, really important issues, especially on the financial side. And I think you've done a very good job of chairing. We did 21 meetings, I think, this year, which is quite a lot of meetings. You kept them nice and short, kept us focused on what we needed to be talking about. And I wanted to say thank you very much for your chairing.
Thank you. I saved my most disruption for this meeting as chair. I saved a good one for the end. I appreciate it. And I do want to echo that I appreciate the colleagues on the committee and their contributions to the debate and discussion this year. I, like Councillor Helmer said, have been on this committee my entire time on council. It's a committee I enjoy, and I think the level of debate and discussion and contributions from members this year was phenomenal, and I know certainly will continue with the next committee's composition. And always a good time, too, to take a moment to thank all of our staff who report into this committee. There are a lot of reports from a lot of diverse areas, a lot of reports that require a ton of background work and research and documentation and legislative requirements that sometimes just get passed. Because it's good work, and that is certainly not a reflection just because we don't debate something that it devalues the importance of that work. In fact, sometimes it's quite the opposite. The work is so thorough and good that we don't have a lot of questions and are able to pass the items very quickly. So maybe I'll just conclude by also thanking our staff and all of the staff who help report and prepare all the documentation for this committee. And again, thank you for all your work this year as well. Also, I'm still chair for a bit, so I could call a special meeting if I really wanted to. But for now, we have a large in-camera agenda, so if there's no other additional business, we'll get rolling on that. We have 10 items, 7 from the regular agenda, 3 from the added. I'd look for a motion to move into confidential session. Deputy Mayor Helmer, Councillor Van Meerbergen. We'll open that for voting on the screen, and then we will move the committee room once that vote is concluded, and we will be adjourning from the committee room.
Closing the vote, the motion's passed 6-0.